Hi there, from Sydney, Australia. You are listening to the Guitar Speak podcast. My name is Matt Wakeling, and thank you so much for joining me. Here we are, episode 21, and we're speaking to David Steedman, the General Manager of Maton Guitars, an absolutely iconic Australian guitar manufacturer, celebrating their 70th year this year. Now, before we get to that interview, I want to give a big shout out to Michael Katselos and everyone at Stormfront Touring for putting on the amazing Gary Moore Remembered tribute concert. You might remember a couple of episodes we spoke to Michael and also Peter Northcott and Chris Katselos, who were part of that amazing guitar lineup. Well, the show was last week and I went along and I was blown away. It was so good. So good. So well done, Michael, for putting together a fantastic show. Michael himself ripped on the guitar. He's a fantastic guitar player as well. So we're looking forward to more stuff coming from Stormfront. Now, I need to let you know today's episode is brought to you by the Michael Dolce Masterclass Tour of 2016. Michael's classes have already started. There was a class in Sydney and Brisbane in this last week, and there are many more dates to come. But first, here's a word from Michael himself.
Hi guys, this is Michael Dolce inviting you to my 2016 Funk Fusion Masterclass Tour. To give you a brief rundown of what the night consists of, we get 10 players in a room in a really relaxed atmosphere, nothing too intimidating. We cover soloing over the one-chord vamp. I will be sharing all my concepts that have worked for me over the years and I still use to this very day. The idea is to show you guys these ideas and apply them to your own voice. If you feel that you know how to play a pentatonic scale and a major scale, that's all you really need. If you're interested in attending the class, you can book through my website at www.michaeldolcemusic.com. So I look forward to chatting with you all and hopefully catch you at my next masterclass. Cheers for now, guys.
Now, Michael's just posted a video with the latest dates and venues for his clinic tour, and also details about the second round of giveaways, in which Michael's giving away some really cool stuff. There's a Trinity model pickup, there's a Mission Rewire pedal, box of GHS strings, Charles Silly guitar strap, and some other really cool stuff. So get onto that. If you go to the Guitar Speak podcast Facebook page, you'll see that video pinned to the top of our page, or get over to Michael Dolce Music. Now, that competition is for Australian residents only. Now, onto the interview of the day. It was a great honour for me to meet and speak with David Steedman, who is the General Manager of Maton Guitars Australia. Now, Maton are celebrating 70 years of guitar production, which is an incredible achievement and really places them in an absolutely unique position in the Australian musical instrument landscape. Now, at the end of the interview, we also hear from Michael Fix, one of our friends here at Guitar Speak Podcast. Michael's one of the first guys we actually interviewed, and you can dig back and find our interview with him. But we sneak peek a little bit of his new album, Bending Air. And of course, Michael is a proud Maton Guitars endorser. But now, onto my interview with David Steedman. Here we go. David Steedman, welcome to the Guitar Speak podcast.
Matt, great to be here. Great to speak with you.
Great. Thanks for your time. We know you've got lots on at Maton, especially in this special year, the 70th anniversary of your great company.
Yeah, we're very proud to be turning 70 this year, Matt.
Awesome. So I'll definitely be asking about some of the celebrations that you've done and that you might have coming up this year. But I wonder if you could tell me a bit about Bill May, the founder of Maton.
So Bill May is Bill passed away in 1994, I think. I unfortunately never met Bill. Mm-hmm. I happened to be married to his oldest granddaughter, and we only met in 1995. So I missed Bill by a year, unfortunately, but he still looms large over this place. I can tell you, he's our founder, still our patriarch, and very important person in our world, and none of us would be here today working in what we do and being incumbents of this wonderful company wasn't for Bill. So Bill started the company back in 1946. He was originally a woodworking teacher, and left the business in probably the mid to late 80s. He had Parkinson's disease, unfortunately, which is obviously hellish for anyone, but particularly more so with someone who was a passionate woodworker.
Yeah, sure.
So his influence is still with us all day, every day inside this organisation.
That's wonderful. So when you first started building guitars, so as you said in 46, what sort of models was he building?
Well, from 1946, from when the company started, so he was actually building guitars a little bit prior to that. But for probably the first 12 or so years, it was purely acoustic guitars.
Mm-hmm.
Our solid body electric master sound range only started in 1958. So the first 12 years was very much acoustic.
Okay. Yeah. And was Bill working? Was he working alone, or was he already having other people work for him in the company?
He started a business with his brother Reg.
Mm-hmm.
His brother Reg was a wood machinist, so a woodworker. So you had the wood machining side of it, you had the woodworking teacher side of it. So that was a beautiful marriage, obviously.
Yeah, great.
And they worked together and built from there. I can't tell you sort of exact numbers per year over the time frame.
Sure.
I do know that it grew gradually up to perhaps around about, I'm guessing around about 20 odd staff.
Mm-hmm.
A few 20, 30 years after he founded the company. I can also tell you that back in the early 80s, when Neville, his son-in-law, started with Maton, I think the company went down as low as about 5 or 6 employees. It was a really, really difficult time.
Yeah.
And then in the late 80s, you had Eric Clapton unplugged and a few other things happened in the world, and Maton also developed a pickup which was very, very high quality and world's best practice at the time, and still is, and they were things that really turned things around for us. And here we are today in 2016, and we have almost 70 employees.
Wow, fantastic. Now, well, to today then, you've got those employees. You're in the Bayswater factory. Is that the current location?
Now, we're in Bayswater from the, let's say, the early 90s to the early noughties, and we left Bayswater in 2003, and we've been in our Hill home ever since. So 2003 to now, so coming to 13 years now.
Okay, cool. Well, you know what? I'm thinking Bayswater because my mate, and I think it was built in 2000, and it's got little Bayswater on the sticker. I think that's what I'm thinking. But so this is the third Maton factory, though, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes,
yeah.
It is. In fact, the first business, other than out of Bill's home in Thornbury at the time.
Sure.
The factory was actually the first factory was in Canterbury Road in Canterbury, which in fact is only about a 5-minute drive from where we are here in Box Hill.
Okay, so
I drive past the old factory every day on my way to and from work.
That's great. That's very cool. So back to the early days a little bit. How were the early Matons received by the guitar community? And was Bill working through dealerships, or was he selling directly to musicians?
The guitars are well received because Bill's motto was to build the guitarist an affordable guitar.
Yeah.
And whether it was fantastically received and people really appreciated that, having a locally made product that was affordable.
Yeah.
Potentially, obviously, it was well before my time. I suspect that might have been better for PR than for the bottom line. But of course, it created a wonderful capital base for where we are now. With respect to getting the guitars out there, there has been some distribution over the journey domestically, but it's primarily been through retail. And you go back to the Brash's music back in the day, wonderful supporters of ours.
Mm-hmm.
Billy Hyde of more recent times. So your wonderful, wonderful support from the retailers over the journey. So we typically so we were very much a manufacturer slash wholesaler, and then have a salesman or salesmen now who are that vital link between the factory here and the retail. And the retailers are really supportive of us, and they did a wonderful job in really educating the public in terms of, it was not only unknown to have an Australian-made guitar, but it was also equally as unknown to have an Australian timber guitar. And so we pioneered the usage of timbers such as Queensland maple, so locally, and Victorian blackwoods, so locally sourced timbers that are now so wonderfully received around the world, and our retailers are very much a part of that.
Okay, yeah, wonderful. Yeah, these days it is very much a standard practice especially for Australian luthiers to use Australian timbers. But yeah, Maton was certainly at the front of all that.
Well, we had to be. We had no choice. It was just American timbers were well regarded, but just prohibitively expensive to obtain.
Right. Okay.
And so we did, and we still obviously sourced imported timbers that are must-haves, like your spruces, your rock maples, ebonies, and rosewood, and so on. We had to do that, but you also needed to pioneer the usage of Australian timbers to make it feasible to press on with guitar manufacture and to get to where we are now. Sure.
A really interesting thing I read about, there was a budget sort of line built at one stage. So you had the flagship models, but then there was some cheap instruments made. But Bill quickly, quashed that idea. After a little while, he was more interested in building a high quality instrument.
Oh, there's no doubt, absolutely. There's probably been models over the journey along that budget line, but it's just long and strong and true that we have to make a better product and make it here locally in Australia. It's our whole mantra. It's our whole platform.
Yeah, right.
And we certainly build for quality more so than quantity.
Sure.
It's crucial to what we do.
Yeah. You mentioned electric guitars and the Master Sound when they came out. Now, 58, that's pretty early in the life of electric guitar being mass-produced. Like the Strat came out in 54, the Telecasters and Les Pauls maybe a year or two earlier. So, Bill was right onto that as well. Was he a progressive kind of a builder?
Yeah, I mean, it was the year after the Second World War finished, obviously 1946, and obviously there's a lot of businesses worldwide that had their formative years immediately post the war, and three that come to mind are Maton, Fender, and Framus. And Framus, Franconian Music, obviously the famous German brand, and it was Bill's very much part of that historical guitar making world, whereby in the years immediately following the war to employ people and keep people in a job and to get the economy going again. Obviously we're at a different level to Fender, or Fender at a different level to us, but the origins are not dissimilar in that it was that immediately post-war period whereby everyone was getting back on track and trying to earn an honest dollar for an honest day's work.
Sure.
And so that had to be the case. We had to just get out there and get amongst it and be pioneers in what they did and make a good product and try and make a dollar out of it. And that was really, really obviously important to what Bill did.
Now, the Master Sounds were the first electric, and they very notably, and I'd say successfully, were reissued around, I think it was the late 90s or 2000s, and they're still part of your range. What other iconic electric models did Maton come up with?
Well, we came up with Bill loved electric jazz box guitars, like the George Goller guitar, the Master Sound, the Starlines, Mayfairs, Ibis, JB4s, all sorts. I mean, you just refer to our website, but there's many and varied electrics, some of which were around for quite a short period of time, such as the wedge tail, for argument's sake, but have now become iconic collector's items.
Yeah, sure.
And I guess now we've moved into a range of master sound guitars whereby our highest selling, our main master sound guitar is our 50th anniversary guitar, which was in 2008, so 50 years after 1958, a master sound guitar. And that's the one you probably recognise most commonly. And that was the most public display of that was the one that George Harrison obtained in England. And it's very much a replica of the guitar that he had.
Fantastic. And when did you get that guitar? So was he in England, or was it when they toured Australia? How did he come into? How did he end up with a Maton, George Harrison?
Not sure if anyone knows the entire detail. The story, as I know it, is they had a gig on the Beatles in Liverpool at home, and my understanding is his guitar at the time, I'm not quite sure what brand it was, but he had an issue with the guitar. So we went to his local shop and said, "We've got a gig tonight, and I need my guitar fixed, please." And the guy looked at him and said, "Well, this is not going to be fixed within today. You're not going to be playing this guitar today." And so George said, "Well, I need a guitar for the gig." And the shop owner went out the back and found a guitar, put it in his hand, and he played it, and that was the Maton.
Wow.
How the shop got its hand on the Maton, not too sure. Don't know how that happened. But that's the story as I know it.
Wow, that's very cool. Of course, the Stones were the other big band in England at that time, and apparently Keith Richards has a Maton story as well.
He's got a wonderful story, Keith. He had again, I think it was a housemate of his at the time. Had a guitar that, of course, was just lying around the house, being a housemate. As I understand it, that housemate left the house in quite a hurry and left the guitar behind, and so Keith ended up being the proud owner of that guitar. And
cool.
He actually wrote and recorded "Give Me Shelter."
Wow.
That guitar. And yeah, there's footage of that, and there's a story about that, especially in our book. I recommend that people buy our book, the recently published book to celebrate our 7th year, the music that Maton made. Available in all good bookstores, Matt.
Nice.
So I'd like to urge your listeners to get into a bookstore and get hold of that book, and you'll be able to read the story about the Stones, the story about the Beatles, the story about many, many bands that have plied their trade, and Maton has formed a great part of what they do.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Speaking about notable artists, can you talk much about Tommy Emmanuel and his association with Maton Guitars over the years?
Tommy Emmanuel, what can you say about the man? We're just wonderfully delighted that we have a relationship with him, and I'm really happy to say that I believe strongly that he feels the same way. So we were his first guitar back when he was about 5 years old. The story goes that he had the guitar. His dad had the guitar, I should say, and he kept it under his bed. And Tommy would from time to time, when his dad was out at work or whatever, would grab the guitar from under the bed, have a bit of a play with it, and then make sure that he put it nice and safely and securely back under the bed, so his old man didn't see and saw no evidence of him playing. I understand that one night his old man got home early and found Tommy with the guitar, and Tommy thought he was going to be probably beaten to within an inch of his life for playing the gorgeous, expensive Maton guitar, but his dad said, "Just play it for me." And so Tommy started to have a bit of a play, knew his chords, obviously, knew his way around the guitar, started playing with it, and his dad's simple response was, "Well, you're better than I am, so you can have it."
Wow.
And that was the start of a long and proud guitar playing life of Tommy, and a long and proud association we share with him to this day.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's been amazing. I remember, years in the late 80s, early 90s, living in Sydney. It was easy for me to go and see Tommy Emmanuel playing just in some small bar or a pub somewhere, and obviously being blown away. But these days he's a household name in the guitar community all around the world, so that must be a wonderful thing. I mean, obviously for you guys to see one of your own out and about, but also for the Maton name to be so well regarded all around the world now.
Oh, it is. I mean, he had have humble beginnings, and he'd be the first to suggest that. But I guess everyone has humble beginnings.
Sure.
And I think the two of us have grown together, which has been a wonderful thing. He lives in Nashville now. He's lived in Nashville probably the last 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
He does something approaching on about 300 gigs a year.
Wow.
Which, if you think of that, you've got to put your travel in.
Yep.
You've got to do all the internal travel, the external travel, overseas travel all the time, and so he's a very, very busy man. But it absolutely defines him, and he loves it, and he's very, very good at it, and he's very giving of his time, and he loves plying his trade. So he was here just recently, in fact, to formally celebrate and formally wish us a happy birthday for our 70th anniversary a few weeks ago, and he got up and played at the gig that we had, and came in and shared a day with us in here in the factory the next day. And obviously, you just see the guys in the factory, their eyes light up when he's here, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful time for us. And that evening he did a masterclass here at Maton, so it was $100 a head, and he had 50 guys here, just lined up in the showroom with a masterclass, which is a bit of show and tell and questions. And someone would typically ask him a question: how do you achieve this particular sound or this particular note? And he'd explain it, and everyone would be, in awe of what he was doing. And then that would then break into a song, and he'd explain how he would achieve certain sounds through illustration, and then actually break into a song that was going to further illustrate the points he was trying to make and
Great.
the sounds that he made. So people see that as just a real bucket list event to attend one of those.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Hey, it's interesting to say, he's so giving of his time, obviously in that class and those things he does. But some of our guests on the Guitar Speak podcast knew Tommy way back. So we've had people like Michael Fix and Peter Northcott and recently David Moyes, and they were all sort of busy in the Sydney scene. And to a man, each of them got gigs or got referrals from Tommy as Tommy got busier and got more and more gigs. Tommy would be looking out for younger players to encourage and get working, especially Michael Fix. He had lots to say about the sort of mentorship that he experienced with Tommy.
Oh, they're very close, those two.
Mm.
Absolutely. And I mean, Michael is just absolutely brilliant in what he does. And, I'm not a guitarist myself, but people say, and they're right, they say that Michael is just incredibly technically brilliant in what he can do. And yeah, I'm sure there was a lot of inspiration for what Michael does in what Tommy has done in the past. And they've played together quite a lot, and they love each other, and they play together, and it's a beautiful thing.
Wonderful. Hey, you mentioned the 70th anniversary, so a book came out. What sort of other events? You mentioned a gig at that you guys put on as well?
Yeah, it was a wonderful gig. The book has been probably in excess of a 2-year labour of love, and it's just come together beautifully. And so it just went into. It was published in late May, early June,
mm-hmm.
and people are loving it. It's not a cheap book. It's a $75 book, but we're selling a lot of them directly here, but we're through our publisher, Scribe Publishing, through all the major book retail outlets around Australia, and they've also got distribution in the US and the UK, which is just starting off now as well. So things are going wonderfully with it, and we're hopefully having a good Christmas with that book. We have also done a couple of 70th anniversary guitars,
Great.
which have been going wonderfully well for us. That's a high-end guitar, about a $3,500 guitar. It's largely based on our Australian guitar, and the stores have absolutely loved that. And in fact, not only our domestic stores have loved it, but almost to a person, each of our worldwide distributors has absolutely loved that. Number one, it's a great quality guitar, but it really helps them in export markets because I guess most people in Australia are not particularly surprised about the fact that we're 70 years old because they've obviously lived through our journey together. But certainly in export markets, Japan in particular, throughout the whole of Europe, absolutely, the US, China. So these places where we've had distributors for a shorter period of time, they're loving having that product. It's such a good product, but they're also loving it because it really franks our existence and and explains to their retailers and their retailers' customers that Maton's not a new product. It may be new enough in that particular market, but they get such a stamp of authenticity when people know that it's a 70-year-old business.
Sure.
They know we're not going to go anywhere, and they know that we're here to stay, and we've attained that age for a particular reason.
Yeah, brilliant. Now, Maton, as you mentioned earlier on, is still family run and owned. Well, why do you think that's important? There can't be many companies in Australia with as much longevity that are still owned by the original family. Why is that an important thing?
I think it's important because there's passion and there's real incentive to be really good, I guess, incumbents of a brand over a period of time, and we know that we're just passes through really inside what is a much larger brand, and I guess the importance of being family owned is because we're very appreciative and very acknowledging of our roots and where we've come from, and we're here at a point in time, and we're proud of that, proud of where we've come from, and all anyone in this business ever wants to do is just make sure that it's a better place after they've been here, and I think that a lot of people achieve that, and I think being privately family owned is the best way to achieve that.
Fantastic. And so in your 70th year, what does the future hold for Maton Guitars?
Well, I hope it's a bright future, Matt. It's my responsibility partly to make sure that it is a successful future. I think that I wouldn't be lying to say that things are difficult domestically in retail and in manufacturing. It's a very, very sad day today, unfortunately, and ironically enough, that the final Ford Falcon has rolled off the assembly line in Broadmeadows today, and that's an incredibly sad event for manufacturing, for Australia, and for Australia's history. That's an iconic manufacturer, and long may manufacturing survive and thrive. We certainly hope we don't go that same way, and we're putting a lot of things in place in order that doesn't happen. And I guess we'll never have the competition that Ford had, which is mass-produced automotive market out of Asia in particular, and Eastern Europe, I guess. But it just shows the importance of working really hard, investing in your people, investing in research and development, and just trying to make a better product all the time, so that you remain relevant and can continue on. And I think that I would find it very difficult to say any bad words about Ford or other car manufacturers who are ceasing to manufacture here. But it's always in the back of your mind that there's a lot of good people involved in those businesses. It's a very, very sad thing that they're no longer going to be able to justify making their product here in Australia. And so we need to work as hard as we can to avoid that. And our retailers here are a massive part of the support network around what we do.
Mm-hmm.
They love our brand. They love our people. They love the fact that we're trying to get better and better. But equally so, it's also important, I guess, one of the advantages we have over a Ford, for argument's sake, is the ability to export. And we are quite a niche product. And we make 8,000 guitars a year, which sounds like a lot, but I guess in Asian standards, not
Sure.
such a great amount. So we're very much positioned at the higher end of the marketplace in Asia and in Europe, and
Cool.
that's really important to us. And our growth in export markets has been wonderfully strong and will continue to be so. We certainly hope we're on a pretty good trajectory in those markets.
Fantastic. Yeah. When we spoke to Michael Fix, he was saying in Europe, and he's in Europe now. Actually, he gets there once a year. The Maton name is very well regarded. On the ground with guitar players, and is a bit of a niche market. It's somewhat an exotic product in a way. So when Michael comes over and he can show his model, the Michael Fix model, and share a bit about Maton, it always goes over really well over there. So that's great to hear. And in Australia, I know, as an owner myself, when I was as a kid, you think, one day I'll get a decent acoustic guitar, a pro quality one. It's always, for me, it was always, one day I'll get a Maton, one day, and eventually that happens. So I think there's a whole generation of players who still love the company, love what you guys are doing. So that's great. So we give you all the best wishes for the next 70 years.
And look, Michael's selling him short in what he's saying, to be honest there with him, Matt. I mean, he is part of the story. He's part of the fabric of this business, and he's part of he's toured for a very long time. And it's thanks to the guys like Michael who are good enough technically, number one, but have got the let's say initiative to. It's really difficult to go overseas and ply your trade. It's a really difficult trade to ply, and for him to go overseas and do that is enormous. And yes, he's got a good guitar, and we're proud of that as well. But gee whiz, he had to get over there and make himself known, and he's done a wonderful, wonderful job of that, and that's part of the whole reason why our exposure and our reputation in all European markets is improving. Largely, thanks to the likes of Michael.
Great.
To yourself personally, all I would say is the good thing, Matt, is that when you get a good guitar, mate, you realise how good a brand is, and then you need to progress through that brand, and you need to buy 2 and 3 and 4 Maton to really satisfy your thirst for a good product. And so I'm sure you'll add to your collection over the journey. Yeah,
love to have a couple more Matons in the stable. That said, the one I've got, it's I've had it for 16, 17 years and playing beautifully and sounding better than ever. So there's a benefit in buying a quality instrument, definitely.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that.
Love and care. Awesome. Well, David, thank you so much for your time. We know you're a very busy man at running a large company. So we really appreciate your time, and really great to hear a bit more about the Maton story and hear about your celebrations of your 70th year.
No problems at all, Matt. And I just wanted to remind the punters out there that we do run factory tours. They happen every Thursday.
Okay, great.
I can, and that's free. Well, it is free of charge, but it's an optional gold coin donation to the Beyond Blue project, which is really important to us.
Excellent.
And I know that it is booked out for a few months.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess after Christmas, perhaps February time, the book is open again. And people love the tour, and we're just a completely open book here. We don't hide anything at all. They can take as much photos or videos as they want.
Fantastic.
And they can get to buy a bit of gear at the merchandise shop, see a bit of the history in the museum, and go on their way and go out to a store and buy a Maton guitar. So it's a beautiful thing.
That's great. So how do people book one of those tours?
They just either give us a call, jump on our website, www.maton.com.au. I think there's a link to the tour, or at least there's a contact us.
Oh,
just
okay.
give us a call.
Fantastic.
And the lovely Simone at reception will help you out.
Great. Excellent. Well, David Steedman, thank you once again. It's been great talking to you, and all the best.
You too, Matt, and all the best to you. And I'm loving your podcast, and I wish you all the success moving forward. And I hope you get more and more subscribers, and it becomes part of the fabric of the Australian music scene, and in internationally as well.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, David. Thank you.
Pleasure, Matt.
So there you go. So great to hear a bit more about the Maton Guitars story. Thanks for joining me on the Guitar Speak podcast. Remember, you can find all of our episodes for download on iTunes in the podcast section, on Stitcher, or if you go to guitarspeakpodcast.libsyn.com. We're going to close out the show today with one of our great friends, Michael Fix. We interviewed Michael way back in episode 3 of the podcast. You can check out that episode. And Michael very kindly gave me permission to use part of a track off his beautiful new album called Bending Air. There's a wonderful track called Losing Myself, played on a beautiful Maton guitar. We'll see you next time.